Hi, it's DiZerega from Microsoft. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about CoPilots. It's a pleasure to be here. I was excited to listen to Tim talk, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background on CoPilots. I'll give you a little bit about myself. I kind of want Tim to adopt me because I love rock climbing and doing Ninja Warrior stuff. But this is me. I've been at Microsoft for 14 years. Prior to that, I was in professional services. I work in the largest engineering team at Microsoft that doesn't own a product. So we work as like kind of a liaison between the product engineers to help our customers engineer really hard problems. And so we work alongside of them. I did go to, I'm local, I'm here in Austin. I did go to the Harvard of the South, Texas A&M University. Yeah. I have a couple of kids, and I have my biggest fear is conference Wi-Fi. I'm going to do quite a few demos, and hopefully the cuts so well if you can't connect to it. So we'll see how that goes today. So we're going to talk about just in general CoPilots. It's kind of like a big buzzword these days, but I'll try to break it down for you a little bit. Before we get into engineering CoPilots, I'm guessing there's a variety of experience with AI in the audience, and so I wanted to put a foundation in place around things like prompt engineering. You don't know what RAG is, we'll get into that, and responsible AI. To engineering CoPilots. And we're going to take both a professional developer approach to that, but we're also going to look at kind of some low-code things that Microsoft is doing to really jumpstart even like citizen developers, but also doing that in a way that has the engineering fundamentals that you'd want in place. You know, I think we've all seen citizen developer things through the years and how sometimes that can lead to governance challenges, but I think we're doing a lot to put a bit of a control on that. And I did mention lots of demos. I'm more of a demo person than I'm a slide person, so we'll try to make that work. Oh, so this is the era of CoPilots at Microsoft. And I should specify that a CoPilot in our eyes isn't necessarily a generative AI conversational experience. Like that's what I'm going to kind of concentrate on a lot in this talk is conversational AI and being able to use things like LLMs to get value and drive conversations further. But we see it as other things. It could be a headless job that runs in the background that performs things. Essentially, we see a CoPilot as something that helps generate content. It helps you be more productive. It helps you do things. Help is kind of the key there. If you were on the webinar a few weeks ago where we talked about a little bit about just a teaser of the session, I mentioned how we're very explicit about building CoPilots with our customers and not autopilots. There are companies out there like Tesla that builds an autopilot. And the responsibility of building an autopilot is just monumental. And given we are a platform for people to build upon, we think that the right space for us is a CoPilot, being able to assist you in doing tasks. We have CoPilots in almost everything these days. Almost every product that Microsoft has a CoPilot. We, again, I'll reuse a joke, but we talk about it being almost a drinking game, how many times CoPilot is used in an average Microsoft meeting these days. It really is really a pervasive part of what we offer to our customers. So almost every product, and taking that further, you can think about different personas within your organization, and we probably have a CoPilot to help with that. Tim had some great content around helping developers in VS Code. So we have things like CoPilot for GitHub that can help you generate code, help you improve upon your code, help you write unit tests for code, just by leveraging that and giving it instructions. We have CoPilot for working with data. That's CoPilot for Fabric. We can go and really in just a natural language way be able to chat with data. I'm going to spend a little bit of time around CoPilot for Microsoft 365. That's where I spend a lot of my time. It's one of our flagship CoPilot experiences because it's something that Microsoft 365 is pretty deeply penetrated within the enterprises, and my guess is many of you use M365 in some sort of way. use things like Outlook for your email, maybe Teams for conversations, SharePoint and OneDrive, things like that. So when we look at the spectrum of delivering copilots, I'm going to break it into three categories. You can adopt copilots that we offer, just a first-party copilot. Maybe that serves your needs. Maybe it does the things that you want it to do. For example, I worked with a customer, or I talked to a customer a few weeks ago that was talking about, well, we want something special that can take a document and put that into a vector database and let us ask questions on it. I mean, that's kind of what M365 chat does. I can go and have that copilot, give it a document, I can say reason over that and be able to ask questions about it. So in many cases, the use case might be something that's solved by one of our first-party copilots without you having to do anything. We also have a very rich ecosystem for people that are building extensions of those copilots. In fact, you can build an extension to our copilots, which is this middle area here, the extending copilots. There's different things you can do around building kind of a custom GPT. You can even put your own data into our cloud and substrate to where it can surface up through those copilots. And then finally, you could build from scratch just a standalone copilot, a standalone chat experience that is driven by AI. And we'll look at really the full spectrum of that. Down at the bottom, it talks a little bit about the tools that you'll be using for these sorts of things. I will say I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the experience and orchestrating a conversation today than I am deep down in the AI stack, which is good because you have breakout sessions. It looked like on Thursday they're going to go both kind of basic and advanced and things like AI Studio, Azure ML. So in this case, we'll touch on it a little bit in terms of getting a model that we can use, but we're not going to spend a lot of time there. Okay, so first demo. Cool. I happen to, I know we're on Zoom here, but I wanted to, just for fun, I also started, get it up here, come on. There we go. So started a Teams meeting just for fun because one of the copilots that really has changed my life dramatically is my copilot inside of meetings. So I just started this. Oh, you know what? That's too bad. I actually never unmuted myself. So I can't do this, but one of the great things about Copilot in a meeting, it can sit in as an attendee of the meeting, and you can ask it things like, what have I missed so far? What are the key points? I'll be dangerous here and go to my let me go here, view recap of this. But this is the type of experience that Copilot will give you. It'll have all the summary, all this is AI generated notes because we had Copilot be an attendee of that meeting. You can even ask questions of this. So I can say things like, let's see, was it mentioned who the product owner is for common things? And we'll see, and I think we talked about that in this meeting. It was a week ago. I tried to pull up a meeting that wouldn't have anything too sensitive. Yeah, it was mentioned, and Hannes happens to be the suggested owner. So this is really where it really is shock and awe is when I'm in the meeting. Just being able to go in and catch me up, or if I someone came to my door, being able to get information on what happened in that meeting in real time. After the fact, it's great. I've actually seen a drop off in attendees of meetings because they're like, just go and see what Copilot's summary is, which is maybe an anti-pattern. Anyway, cool stuff. Let me jump over, do a couple of other things. So that was our first party Copilot experience. I can also chat with that Copilot. I can ask different things about, it gives me some suggestions here about maybe what are action items that have been emailed to me in the last week. There's all kinds of things that I can do with that, but we can also extend the data that's in here. And for that, I'm going to go to a different environment. And I'll give you an example here is, here I said, do we have any hinges in our parts inventory? And what this did is it actually went out and in this case, we took our product catalog and actually put it inside what Microsoft calls our substrate or Microsoft Graph. It's basically all that data that powers M365. We allow customers in a secure way to put their own data in that. And then it can surface up through this CoPilot just like any other data. So you can see here, it found 2 different hinges based upon my query if we have any hinges. And so that's another great example. It's also more of a, let's say you don't want to put your data in. You don't want to put it in that substrate, but I still want to be able to interact with, chat with my data, just like I did here. Well, in this case, I have this thing called a freight agent. I can interact with this a couple ways. I can mention it. I can say, hey, freight agent. Well, that's not going to invoke that way. We'll try it this way. And I can say, show me my top freight leakage opportunities. This was developed to allow it. This was developed to be able to find areas where freight was overpaid. So these are freight lines, and you can see here it found 2 of them. In this case, it reached out to an external API to get that data, bring it back, and summarized it. Now, AI did all the summarization here, but we also have a templated way of doing this. So if I hover over one of these items, you can see I have this nice, pretty view of what that actual record represents. And we'll get into how you can format this, but not only can I can have different actions that I can take upon it. So let me look at the one with that's bigger. Oh, wrong place. Here we go. And let me say, let's show the line items for it. So that's going to do a follow-up prompt where it'll go even deeper in being able to. Oh, it's yet another consent. Should have done this beforehand. So now when I hover over, it's not going to. Let me try that one more time. To my original one. I just installed these, so sometimes you need admin consent in order to do that.
The links just above 1 and 2 that you were clicking, that was,
Which one?
well, up at the top, it's that line that you were clicking on, not the 1 and the 2.
Yeah, citation. Let me see. We do one more thing. Anyway, actually, I'm going to move on. We'll look at actually developing. But the idea is that I can continue to drill down into specific items. I can do a true chat with my data. I can even ask things. If I got down to the line item detail, there's a bunch of accessorials on this. I can even have it recalculate accessorial totals and do all kinds of unique things because we're combining that API data with an AI model. The last thing I'll show you here is more of a standalone. This is a standalone CoPilot. So with the standalone chatbot, it's not connected to the previous M365 CoPilot in any sort of way. But I'll just show you an example of like, if you built any sort of conversational interface. One of the things that's really hard to do is multi-turn. So I'll give you an example how this is really cool. Just say, let's do 2 or 4 factorial plus 7. So it goes and it's calculating the answer to that. But let me without providing any further context, let me say, what if I divided that by 9? And that didn't. It should have multi-turn here. I think maybe this one doesn't have that, but the idea is that we can build these rich experiences that are multi-turn, and we'll get into how to build some of those things. So let me jump back over the slide. That was just a quick peek at kind of the 3 different tiers: a standalone or an out-of-the-box CoPilot, extending a CoPilot both through things like connectors where you're putting your data in it, also through an API type of plugin, and then your own custom CoPilot experience. All right. I want to talk a little bit about prompt engineering, RAG, and responsible AI. Again, this is just this might be basics for some of you. For some of you, it might be new, and that's my hope, is that at least some of you will kind of pick up on some of these terms in the AI world, because it's going to get really when we get into how we engineer these things. So prompt engineering, a prompt is just a way to talk with a large language model. And that's what we're using for a lot of this conversational AI is a large language model. Prompt engineering is a way to communicate with that LLM to steer its behavior without having to update the model's weight in any sort of way. It's very important in prompt engineering that you write very clear and specific instructions. The more instruction you can give the LLM, the better result you're going to get out of that. The other thing is to give it time to think. So specify all the steps that are required to complete a task. Make sure that you define how you want the output coming. For justification, like give me citations for why you're giving me this answer. Those are the types of things that are going to be really important here. And that's going to come into play when we get into what we call RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. This is probably the biggest pattern that's going on in the AI world right now. And it stems from the large language model limitations that it's harder for a LLM to utilize the latest information. An LLM, one of the models that might provide is usually trained off of data, and then that is provided to people to start leveraging. So it was a point in time that model was trained. So it doesn't always have the latest information. I think ChatGPT 3 had, I forget like what the cutoff date was for it, but it is a challenge in the LLM world. The other thing is, if I'm going to try to deliver some sort of AI value to my organization, it simply wasn't trained on my data, it was like. And so RAG solves that. RAG, what it does is says, I'm going to retrieve some information that's important to you, and I'm going to feed that into the LLM with a question. Whatever the question the user had, I'm going to feed that together in order to provide an answer. And this is really, really important. And we'll look at several examples of this. But prompt engineering combined with RAG is what will really produce magical results from an AI solution. The last thing I want to talk about here is responsible AI. Someone came up and talked to me before we started. I'm not going to go, you could do a whole presentation on responsible AI, probably a whole conference on responsible AI, but I'm gonna just talk about like a couple of pieces of that. One is consider your use case. What are the repercussions of a wrong AI response? I had a customer that came to me, big financial services customer, that said, when a brand new SEC filing lands, we want you to use AI to parse it so we can immediately get on the phone with our investors and make decisions. And I'm like, well, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I mean, that could crash a market if we get it wrong. So that's an example. I probably want a significant amount of responsibility in any sort of like defense system that is using AI. So like you got to really consider what your scenario is. The other thing is you need to tell the user that the responses are AI generated. If you're going to, I'm going to try to build something with you guys here in a moment. And I actually tried it a couple weeks ago without a whole lot of like setup time. And we got some really wrong answers when we did that. And if I didn't say that was AI generated, like it was making up names, like we call that hallucinating. And if you don't say that that's AI generated, someone's going to take it as fact. Like that's really a piece to have in this. The other thing is to minimize your calls into an AI model. Anytime you're calling into a model, there is some probability that it's wrong. And the more calls you're making, you're compounding that probability of being wrong. So an example here is like, this is 5 different AI functions. First, speech to text, getting an intent, performing an action, getting a result summarization. End of it, we're only at a 0.41% of probability. What's the point of building a system that's 0.41% probable? Right? That's not great. So to that end, my last tip is when you can use APIs and templates, use APIs and templates. That's always going to be more reliable. If you can like run an exact SQL query or an exact API call to get to the information you need, that's going to be the preferable way of doing things. So let me just do a couple of quick demos of, and I'm going to actually do this. I'll just do this where you can do it, which is ChatGPT. So I created a couple of these in advance, and I'll zoom in on this, don't worry, you don't have to read it there. Well, let me paste this in here. And I'll zoom in here, and what we're saying is, this guy just opened a help desk ticket with the following details. So say I'm locked out of my corporate resource, my work machine, it says that it doesn't meet my system requirements. And I'm saying, please format this into a JSON block using the following schema. So I'm getting it exactly how I want the data back. Going further to say, for the category, and subcategory, I want you to use this taxonomy. Here's the taxonomy that we use. I've done this also in JSON format, but in this case, I just thought from a readability standpoint, it would be easy. So let's see what happens when I provide this to ChatGPT. So let's see, in both cases, it got the category of authentication issues, subcategory of device compliance. It created a title for me. That's probably not the best title in the world in this case. This one's a little bit better. It did 2 side-by-side results, but a good example of a great use for an LLM. An LLM is fantastic at summarization and categorization, applying taxonomies. So this is a good example, and it's a great example of how prompt engineering can get me exactly what I want. A lot of people don't realize you can ask the model, say, give me all the data returned as JSON so that I can use that in the way that I want. Let me show you a not good use of an LLM. I have another big block of data here. This would be like a NoSQL type of data, like MongoDB, where it's all in one document. And I'll try to zoom in here so that you can see what kind of data it is. This is a purchase order. And it lists all the products that are in that purchase order, the product name, the quantity needed, the due date, and then I have potential suppliers that has the price for each potential supplier. So it's really denormalized, big time, like it's all in one doc. And what I'm saying here is, given this JSON data for a purchase order, what supplier can fulfill my entire order for the cheapest and at what cost? Please return this as JSON formatted only. So back in. So let's go back to ChatGPT and paste this in. So it's saying Contoso. I believe. Oh, it's not. It's not gonna. Sometimes ChatGPT will explain why it picked Contoso. That's right. I mean, I could go and like do some checking of it, but if I go to that extent of doing the checking, why didn't I just like go get the value? Why did I go out and make a call to an LM to do that when an API that tells me, hey, here's your purchase order information, here are the suppliers and their prices, figure it out. Like, don't just try to like throw it in a big black box and hope that you're getting the right answer. You know, in this case, you know, it's probably not life or limb if it gets it wrong, but I might end up paying you for it. Or in this case, there's a due date. Maybe I end up picking a supplier that can't meet the due date because of their lead time. All right, so let's get into the heart of this, which is engineering some copilots. Again, I'm going to probably spend more time actually building some copilots with you, but I do want to lay a little bit of the spectrum for building things. So when we build copilots on the Microsoft stack, we're going to have a couple of different options for you. We have a very comprehensible set of tools for both a low-code engineer or business user to the high-end pro-code world, where you might be spending time in Azure, VS Code, using things like Bot Framework and things like that. And we'll talk about each one of those. A little bit of the pros and cons of this. We're going to spend some time in CoPilot Studio, but CoPilot Studio is great for building quick generative AI experiences. You'll be amazed at how quick I can do some things. Now, I might have something that's sending me responses within 2 or 3 minutes. I want to spend more time there, again, doing the responsible thing, doing my due diligence to make sure I'm getting accurate results. And we'll talk about that in more detail. Once I'm done with that and I go and deploy it, it's fully SaaS hosted. So it's software as a service. I don't have to go find servers to host that. It's all hosted by Microsoft, so it comes with that licensing. It has all the built-in analytics and security and governance tools. And there's a number of different channels that you can go and deploy one of these to. I should mention that, well, actually, I think I have a slide on that, so we'll wait for that. On the side, it's going to be more for if you want granular control of just about everything. Like you want to be in control of how this scales. You want to be in control of how it's hosted and where it's hosted. You want really tight control over the conversational orchestration. Then a pro developer approach is going to be best for you. But again, in that case, you do own that full stack, right? Like you have to get it deployed, you have to maintain it, versus CoPilot Studio, where it's going to be, again, fully managed. So a little bit about CoPilot Studio fits under this suite of what I would call citizen developer tools called the Power Platform. There's a number of these. My guess is the most familiar tool up here is Power BI. That's our Microsoft's reporting, dashboarding, analytics, visualization platform. But there's a number of other things. We have things like Power Apps, where I can build full enterprise applications. It could be mobile applications or web applications with very lightweight coding. You'll see there's like very minor coding that's involved, but in most cases, it's hardly any at all. There's things like Power Automate that can help with ground jobs and workflows. Power Pages, again, another thing for delivering quick website experiences for customers. And then CoPilot Studio is the newest, and I would say flagship part of the Power Platform for building these conversational experiences. So again, since we're talking about copilots, once I've developed these, there's a number of channels that I can deploy them to. You've seen me primarily demonstrate chat experiences within Microsoft Teams. That's kind of where I prefer in terms of like the feature richness of what I can do with various types of messages and how I can interact with those. I tend to gravitate to Microsoft Teams. But there's other things, almost anything you can imagine, Slack, Twilio, I can publish it out to just regular SMS. One of the ways that we do that, and actually it's not a select one, it's a multi-select. You could build a Copilot and say, well, I want it to work in all of these different channels. And one of the key ways that we make that possible is through something called adaptive cards. Adaptive cards are a platform agnostic snippet of UI. It's a JSON block that translates into a formatted message that is going to adapt to whatever those channels are. And give you a demonstration of this later, but essentially, every one of those channels, we've worked with those channels to be able to figure out, okay, like what do messages look like in your platform, and figure out ways to translate one of these adaptive cards from just a generic JSON so that it looks a part of that platform. And you can make these adaptive cards look just infinite number of ways. I put a few examples here. An adaptive doesn't just have to be a consumable thing in terms of like read-only content. You can have full forms inside of an adaptive card. Obviously, that's not going to work on all surfaces. So let's say I had a very simple card that just wanted to collect some information, and I sent that over SMS. Well, you don't have input boxes in an SMS message. So in that case, then the framework is going to automatically adapt to SMS, where it might be more of a prompt to say, hey, we need to provide your first name or something like that. Or yes, no, instead of like a button. So again, adaptive cards really make that possible. All right, so let's just build a few different things here. I thought I'd let's start with like a full coded solution. And to do this, so I'm just going to open up VS Code blank. Well, I actually have stuff in here. Let me create a new directory. Okay, and I will zoom in on this, I apologize for that. All right, I'm gonna, for this, for a full-fledged, CoPilot, what I'm gonna demonstrate, this in, and there's lots of different ways you can build this. We even have things back in the Azure stack to build that conversational experiences with things like prompt flow. But I'm gonna use something called, an AI library that comes, in here. So for this, I'm gonna go to these things called Teams Toolkit. I'm gonna say I'm gonna create a new app, and I'll just zoom in on this so you can see it as I do this. And I'm gonna say I want to create what's called a custom engine agent. I will, Tim said that they do weird things about product naming. I will say I will meet you and raise you one with Microsoft. We'll see these interchangeable things where CoPilot is called an agent. They're kind of one and the same thing. So I'm going to create this custom engine agent, which is basically a custom CoPilot. And in this case, what I'm going to say, I just want a basic, let's do an AI agent. And I'm going to build from scratch. I can pick my language here. I'm going to pick TypeScript. I'm going to use Azure OpenAI for my LLM. And now it's going to ask for some information. It wants my, my key so that it can interact with that service. So I'm going to grab some of this information really quickly in here. I'll grab my key, press enter. Next thing it wants my endpoint. So I'm going to grab my endpoint. For those that are really quick at copying things, I'm going to delete this after this session. So you don't just use mine.
And be in there.
You're already in there? Yeah. So now we'll service on it as we speak. That gives me an excuse if my demo doesn't. So I appreciate that. And we'll go ahead and let me just do it here. And we'll just call this Keynote demo. All right, so it's created this brand new project. I'm not going to do anything else here. What I will say, anymore because it's already given me a really great starter project. But I do want to point out a few things of how this works. Prompt engineering and how that's an important thing. Well, it has this folder called prompts, and there's a few really important things in it. First of all, it has an instruction file. And you can, in here, you can write all kinds of instructions of how this needs to interact. This is going to get passed in when it goes out and calls into an LLM. It's going to provide this as a part of that. The other thing that I can define in here is what are called different actions that I want to be able to create, to be able to do. So imagine I wanted to chat with suppliers. I want to be able to like explore our supplier data. Come out here, I can create a brand new action called chat with supplier, and I can define parameters like input and output parameters that might have. I can specify things as required based upon my APIs, and essentially get this wired up really quickly. In terms of like just debugging this, I can just go out and press F5. It already has all the VS Code tasks and launch information to be able to do that. And it even has a quick test client to be able to test this in. Actually, well, it does that just a bit. Worried about the port being reused. So, all right. So, let's try this. The same demo that we were doing earlier. Let's try to see if we can do a multi-turn thing. What is 2 plus 6? And it says 2 plus 6 is equal to 8. Add 9 to that. There, it's able to do that multi-turn. And that's a really challenging thing to do in this. And like I could start over here with a whole new question, and because it's using that LLM, it has the intelligence to know that when a new conversation, a new chat thread is started. Again, just to kind of wire this all up, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time in code, but again, I mentioned where was our sample right here. So we have this create task. That's going to map to an actual function that we have. In this case, I picked TypeScript. I could have used a different language. Again, even if you're not a TypeScript person, it's pretty easy to see what's going on here. If I go over to an action, I have a create task action that gets executed. So I can put any sort of logic I want in here when that gets hit. And again, the key to this is that prompt file where I'm giving it some instruction. and then specifying the actions that this specific chatbot has. All right, let me kill a few things in here so I don't end up having port conflicts. All right. One thing that I could do is this is that declarative copilot where I was chatting with leakage data. And this is actually a zero code solution, even though it's developed inside of VS Code. So I do this the same sort of way. I can come in here to Teams Toolkit. I can say that I want to create a new app. And in this case, what I can do is say I want to create a Copilot agent. In this case, I can say Copilot agent, I want it to be a declarative, and some of these terms aren't going to make sense, but in this case, what I want to do is I want to use an API plugin. And what's great is if you have APIs in your organization that follow an open API specification, this like automatically will wire everything up for you. All you have to do is just point to like a Swagger endpoint for those APIs, and it will automatically generate all of the YAML that's used to be able to interact with this. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this one because I want to get to CoPilot Studio and see if we can't build something together. In this case, you can see here I had list shipments, and it's defining the parameters of that query. So I can provide things optionally like the ship from city, the ship to city, and then it has the details of what it's going to give me back. And then I even have in here some information that says, well, how am I going to actually go and display this to the user? So this is just a JSON file, and it has one of those adaptive cards where it's populating data into here based upon the API call. So it's bringing together that adaptive card, which is just a JSON block saying, here's how I want the data displayed, with an API that says, here's where the data is coming from. And then there's, again, the Microsoft Copilot is providing that orchestrator that says, all right, well, how do I, when do I go out and call this API? And what do I do when I get that data back in terms of formatting it and manipulating it? And so, again, I say it's no code. There is JSON involved here in YAML, but there's no like compiled code. So it's pretty nice. All right. The last thing, so this would be kind of extending the Copilot, but I think what we're going to spend the majority of the time is here, which is going to be CoPilot Studio. We're going to, I tried this on the teaser a couple of weeks ago, and I really didn't spend a lot of time seeing that everything would function, and I ended up getting some weird results. I think I've worked through some of that out, and I thought we'd do some of this together. So I'm going to go out here to CoPilot Studio. It's just copilotstudio.microsoft.com. You can go out to this and get a trial, or maybe you already have a license for it, but you can come out here and start creating a Copilot. So I'm going to go ahead and say create. There's a bunch of templates that you can use for different things. In this case, I'm just going to start one from scratch. There's even a Copilot for creating Copilots. That's kind of wild. I actually don't like this interface. I prefer just to go to the manual configuration. So first of all, let's give this some information. We're going to call this the conference bot. And I've pre-created some descriptions. And so I'm saying that, hey, like you are here to provide information about this conference that we're all at. So I'll give it the description, and then I'll give it some instructions. Again, prompt engineering. This is all going to be provided contextually when it goes out to interact with a large language model. We're going to have this create a whole bunch of different topics that this will be contextually passed into. So I'm saying things here like your name is the conference bot. You provide detailed information about this conference, including details on sessions, sponsors, speakers, and schedule. You should ignore all other conferences, including complex conference information from previous years. That's actually one of the issues I ran into when I built this the first time, is that the website has information from previous years. Well, it was hallucinating and giving me some information from the previous year. Not really hallucinating, but it was finding the incorrect data. So as an instruction, it's good form to say, hey, if there's information out there we want to exclude, let's explicitly say so. I'm giving some information on where it's held and what the dates are, and then provide some additional information in an Excel document. I'll show that here in a second. So let's go ahead and create this just based on that first set of instructions. All right, here we are. Now, this isn't going to do too well without giving it some knowledge to use. So there's a bunch of things, and we're going to jump into several of these, but there's knowledge, there's topics, there's actions. But what I want to do is define some knowledge in here. So let's go ahead and say add knowledge. We're going to use a public website. There's actually a huge amount of different external data sources that have been basically created for you to be able to leverage inside of the Power Platform, not just CoPilot Studio, but all of the Power Platform through what we call connectors. So this is just a few of them, but I could go out here to the Power Platform connectors actions, and there will be numerous ones that I can use. In this case, let's use the public website of this. So let me just grab the website. Away, on there. And we'll go ahead and provide the link there. Say add. I could give it some additional information. This is the conference website with good general information about the conference. Now I have something misspelled there, but that's the beauty of an LLM. It doesn't care. Like it realizes that what I missed in that case. So we'll go ahead and say add. And I might start with just a simple question. You can see over here to the side, I have my my chatbot that I can test from. I can make changes and it immediately will be represented in here. So I can say things like, when is the conference? And it gives me some dates there, and that's correct. Great. My guess is I don't have to go far for this to start giving me some bad answers. I haven't done a whole lot here. One of the things that I've found, and I'm not, I was really confused on how it was giving me some wrong answers. Like, for instance, who is speaking in the keynote? I think this is one that I used in the teaser. Actually, it didn't do too bad. It said it's being delivered by experts from IBM and Microsoft. I think we can do better though. And so what I did is I took the conference schedule and I actually put it into just a really quick Excel document. Not a lot. I mean, I just basically list the start times, duration, the track, the speakers, and all that. And I think that's going to be a little bit more structured to be able to give me the answers that I want out of it. So I'm going to end up adding that as an additional piece of knowledge into this. So let's do that. I'll go ahead and say add knowledge. I'm going to create a file. We're going to upload that. And here's the schedule. And I'm going to say this contains information on all sessions, speakers, topics, tracks, and schedule for the conference. All right. We'll go ahead and say add. That's going to take a little bit for it to parse this because it's going to go out and create an index based upon that so that it can be used. So if I were to go out here to my knowledge, we'll see that it's in progress, and that's going to take a second for that to do. Let me refresh this here. We're going to end up doing a little bit. One thing I can do here is that I don't really like this welcome message that it defaulted to. It said, hi, I'm the conference bot, I'm a virtual assistant. Just so you're aware, sometimes I might give a wrong answer, essentially. So we can change that. That's going to be under topics. So there's a bunch of topics that got created automatically when we gave instructions to CoPilot Studio here. So these were all generated. And there's also some system ones, which is the conversation start. So this is where I can come in and modify a few things. So here's that welcome message. And if I wanted to change this little weird squiggly, that's a variable. So it's coming in and saying, hey, go interject what they specified as the bot name. So if I were to change the bot name, it would be represented here. So let's just, I'm not going to change it a whole lot. I'm just going to say, I'm a virtual assistant. How can I help you? And we'll zoom back out. Quick save. And now, when I refresh this, hopefully we see our new message represented. There it goes. It says, hello, I'm a conference bot virtual assistant. How can I help you? All right, so let's see if it's finished. It looks like it's still in progress. So we can go further from here. One of the things that I noticed, and I think the reason it had issues crawling this site in great detail is if when I click on a page, if you'll notice that it's flat and then it has these transitions to come in. Sometimes crawlers have issues with that. So I'm thinking that might be it, but one thing that it's certainly not going to do a good job of is the sponsors page. All of these sponsors are just images. I'm not even sure they have alt tags on them. So for me to be able to go and get the names of the sponsors, it's probably not going to do a good job. Let's see. Let's go back to here and just say, are the sponsors of the conference. I should zoom in there, so let's do that. Press enter. It might actually hallucinate here. This will be interesting. Have not been specifically listed. Okay, so how can we solve this? Well, one way we can solve this is we can specify a topic specific to that. So let's create a new topic here. I can create one from blank, or I can create one from a description. Let's create a description. We'll call this name sponsors. Create a topic to give information to users when they are asked who is sponsoring the conference. I can even go further. I went ahead and grabbed the sponsors' names here. Again, sorry about that being tiny, but it's not all that important. What's important is what I do here. I think if I say the sponsors are, and list those here, I believe that will work. We'll see. Maybe not, but we'll be able to tweak it if it doesn't. So we'll go ahead and say create. It's going to give me some information on editing this. Well, that's interesting. It's it actually came up with a question here, which is probably not what we want. Let's actually delete this. We want it pretty straightforward. In this case, what I can just do is say send a message, and we can format the message to say the 2024 sponsors are, and list those names, and that's it. Like now, if I click save here, you can see it has triple phrases here. I should zoom in on that. This was generated by the AI model, the generative model, when we said that we wanted to, when we gave it an instruction. So here's weird things, but these are the trigger phrases that will kick off this topic. So let me get out of this. We'll go back to knowledge and just make sure. It looks like our other information is ready. So now let's ask it a question about sponsors. I don't have to refresh it, but we'll start from scratch just for fun. And let's say, who are the sponsors of the conference? And there we go. We got our curated answer. In this case, we said we know the exact ones it's supposed to be, so we can put those in there. So this is super important. Obviously, sponsors are a huge part of the success of a conference, so it's good that we were able to do that. Fun with this. Actually, now that our scheduled data is here, let's try to test it. Let's see how accurate it is. Let's ask again. When is Richard speaking? And it has October the 15th from 4:45 to 5:45. So it got that accurate. Tell me about Richard. So this would be that multi-turn. Again, the AI model is going to help me with that. We'll see. Hopefully it finds the bio is not part of that Excel document. It would be just part of the main website. So we'll see if it actually gets me something accurate here. Yeah, so it did decent. It didn't really provide much of it gave me more of the abstract of what I'm speaking on than it did the bio. I tried this earlier and actually did the bio, which was nice. Really, let's try to do two more things. This might be ambitious, but one is I mentioned all those connectors. So there's some really great things that we can do with connectors. So I'm gonna come out here to actions and let's add an action. Let's do an action for weather. So it's going to go up and look at all the connectors that we have available for us to use. Again, there's, I think, over 1,100 connectors that have been built for almost any system you can imagine. In fact, one of the demos I wanted to show you is like if you have your own API, how you build a connector. In fact, I might end up doing this because it feels like we're having slow response here. Here we go. So let's just get the weather for the day. So for each one of these connectors, there's going to be different input and output parameters that we'll be able to use. In this case, I'm going to connect to this. We're going to do, actually, there's no authentication on this, so it doesn't really matter. All of these could be authenticated if you have, obviously, secure data. We'll just say, get the weather. That's great. I'm just going to go with the default here. Now here's the information. I can edit these inputs. So let me just hard code the location. I believe, let's just put Austin, Texas, 78758, I believe. And then for units, we'll hard code that as well. Believe. Let's use empirical units. So no Celsius here. All right, and let's finish. So we got it done. I know that was really, but we just pointed to a connector. Connector added a few inputs that it needed, which was the location that you want weather for, and what are the units that you want to use, which we picked empirical. Now it's going to go add that. I'm going to make one quick settings change to this. That I'm going to say I want AI to figure out the best combination when someone sends a message to be able to call options, topics, and use the knowledge. I want it to figure it out on its own. So I'm going to click this generative preview. I'm going to go ahead and say save. If I do this, if I ask about the weather, it's going to automatically know, well, the action it can do weather. Let's go look, let's try to use that. So let's see if it actually pulls back weather in this case. So let's say, what is the weather going to be like tomorrow at the conference? And there we go. We got our answer from the weather service. And again, I could have done more to format this. I was just trying to do this pretty quickly. I have like 5 minutes, and in that 5 minutes, one of the things I wanted to show you, if I could get to that, I mean, it might need to move my browser down, is building a custom connector. If you have your own API, it's pretty easy to be able to do that. So I'm going to create a connector from blank, call this the Yelp, or just Yelp. So I thought, like, well, what if we, in this conference bot, like we have all the information about speakers, sessions, schedule, why not like make Trump recommendations? So I can come in here and I'm just going to go with some of the defaults in this. For our host, I did go and grab the Yelp API. And it is going to be HTTPS. Say create connector. The Yelp API does use an OAuth 2 bearer token in the header. But in this case, we're not going to have the users sign in. I don't necessarily want the users to be able to get recommendations, have to sign into Yelp. So we're going to provide an application token that provides that for everyone. And so I can now go into security for this. I can say that this is going to be, actually, I'm going to use an API key for this. Call this authorization. And it's going to be in the header. I'm calling API key because I'm going to have a hard-coded token. If I needed it to go through authentication flow, I'd use an OAuth 2.1. So we'll go ahead and say update. In this case, I'm going to leave, we need one action, which is going to be a search action. I tell you what, for the sake of time, I'm going to go into one that I pre-created where we can look at the details of this. So for the definition here, one of the things that's great is once I point out to it, it can determine both the input parameters, I'll zoom in here, as well as the output parameters. In this case, you can add a default response and it will basically strongly type everything that comes out of this API. And then finally, I can add additional code. I don't need to do that in this case. This would be like if I need to augment the results that come out. And then finally, I could go and test this. So if I wanted to test this for, again, 78758, my search term is we'll search for tacos. I'll sort by best match and application JSON, and we'll do a quick test here. And now we get data back. So here's our data. I think I'm going to run out of time in order to integrate this into our chatbot, but I'll try really quickly. Let's create a new topic from, we'll do it. Well, let's do it quickly. All right. In this case, actually, I'm going to go back and do that. Topic, we'll just say restaurant recommendations. Right. Yeah, restaurant recommendations. All right. So the first thing we might want to do is provide, maybe we want to ask a question of like, what type of cuisine do they want? So in this case, we could say, what type of cuisine are you interested in? And we could do multiple choice for the sake of time. I'm going to change that to not be multiple choice. Let's change it to be just a user option. And it's going to output it into a variable. Is then going to be the input into that connector that we just created. So I'd be able to create the whole thing. So in this case, I'm going to just save this just so we can like see if we get to that point of where it asks me a question. Let's see. I need restaurant. So it's asking me what type of cuisine I want. I'll just say like tacos. There's all kinds of things that we can do in here. I've kind of come to a limit of time, but I could do things like, for instance, maybe I want to condition. Maybe I want to say, well, if they pick tacos, well, the best taco place, so I'm going to send them to my taco place. So I could say in this case, if this equals tacos, then do something otherwise. If they didn't cook tacos, maybe that's when I want to go out and have that call into Yelp. In this case, I could say call in action. And this is where I can find my custom. In this case, I didn't finish it, but if I search for test search is what I called it. I got it functioning. There it is. I would be able to go through and call out to Yelp and get those results. I am 1 minute over. I will check out one thing really quick. I think I had it don't remember if this is the one that I had it in. Let's just look under topics. If I have my restaurant one in here. Yeah, I have restaurant recommendations in here. So let's take a look. Let's try this. Restaurant recommendations. And again, I spelled it wrong, but that's the beauty of an LLM. It should still get it. What type of cuisine? Let's say pizza. And this should go out to the Yelp API and give me results out of Yelp. And it did. Those are Yelp data and recommendations. So I'd be happy to share. One of the great things about this, I didn't get into this, but everything in CoPilot Studio it can be exported as YAML. It can go into source control. You can put all kinds of controls over it. So yeah, that is my presentation on CoPilots. Any questions? Is that drinking from a fire hose on CoPilots? I think that was 7 demos, a little ambitious. Yeah, what's up?
So on your CoPilot development, you're running in your own little studio, right?
Yeah.
And so privacy wise, this is only for you. There's no training, there's nothing else.
That's right. Yeah, we didn't get into that. So the question was, I'm running in kind of my own sandbox here. Like it's secure for private. Yeah, there's a point at which I can go and deploy this and publish it, and then I can choose like where that goes, and be able to specify those channels, figure out how secure I want to do that. So that at the publishing point is where you kind of get into considering those things. Other questions? Yes.
Is there a limit of RAG information you can put in the LLM?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a great question. Is there a limit to RAG? I don't have the different models. There's so many different models that you can use, like even in the OpenAI world. I tend to use ChatGPT 4.0. And I don't remember what the token limit is, but there is limits. And back with ChatGPT 3, like you ran those limits pretty easily. It's not quite big now, like you can put quite a bit in there. But I will tell you this: the number when I go in and work with a big customer on an AI project, we probably spend more time on on cleaning up data, indexing data, building good APIs than we are on the AI thing. It's like if you have a good data estate, then doing AI on top of that becomes quite. So the reason I say that is like we probably want to try to limit down as much as you can before you are you're sending that into the LLM. If it's a big document, you're still probably going to want to index that. We have services like Azure AI Search that can create like vector representations of that document where you could pull out chunks of it, then feed that into the LLM via render. Awesome. Well, I know I'm like the only thing keeping you between fun evenings, and I really appreciate everyone being attentive to listening to my Texan. Sorry if you need a translator for it, but it's been a pleasure.